What is India's biggest financial scam? 5,000 crores.
If I go back my olden days, yes, I feel that I don't think any MBAs or any business person gets this kind of exposure like what all I have got. I am saying, oh, you are fighting for me. I am here. I am prepared to come forward. You just work out, just spare your person and let's sit together. And at one point of time, there were 2 or 3 agencies waiting to pounce on me as if I was something a commodity. Only one, my request is, I don't want bouquets. Don't give me brick pens. It's too much of a swing from top to the bottom, again bringing that back, and I won't say that I am hero. Let me be what I am, and I am proud of what I am.
In the event that you ask me if it's possible for a single individual to cause both a bull run and even a market crash, my answer would be Harshad Shantilal Mehta. Harshad Shantilal Mehta was born in Rajkot, Gujarat, to a destitute family in 1945. He completed his studies in the state of Madhya Pradesh. In 1976, he began studying in Lala Lajpat Rai College, Mumbai, where he eventually earned a BCom degree. After graduating from college, he stayed at Mumbai and worked as a salesperson. After a while, when he was 26 years old, he went to work for a firm as an insurance salesman. While working there, he gained a thorough understanding of the stock market as a whole. This was his first exposure to the stock market and its potential and the opportunities it brought. He was fascinated. Later that year, he resigned from his insurance job and made a major decision of his life. The decision that would forever alter the course of history. He realized that the knowledge he had gained would not be sufficient for him to achieve success in the stock market. So he decided to work with brokerage firms in order to have a better grasp of how the stock market worked, as well as network with market experts. He was able to meet new people and broaden his professional network as a result of the interactions he had while working with these brokerage firms. Growing out of this experience, in 1984, he and his brother launched Growmore Research and Asset Management Company, a stockbroking firm, at the age of 30, and registered it with the Bombay Stock Exchange and began trading and investing in stocks. Everything was going pretty well. So in 1986, at the age of 32, he thought it was a time to take his career to the next level. He merely wished for more money and a luxurious life. And that's when the real action began, one that the Indian stock market had never seen before. Yes, he chose to manipulate the Indian stock market in order to reap enormous riches. For this, he needed a significant amount of cash. To be more precise, hundreds of crores were required to carry out this operation. But the question was how? How could he raise this much money? This vast sum of money is beyond the comprehension of someone who was born and raised in a poverty-stricken family. This led him to begin looking into various potential ways for raising money. He began collecting every piece of information and data from every possible source available. He sought, researched, and investigated and spent relentless nights in pursuit of a solution. And at the long last, he discovered the unvarnished truth, the flaws and vulnerabilities of the Indian banking system, which paved the way for a discovery of a solution through which he could potentially arrange funds to manipulate the stock markets. In the early 1990s, banks in India were required to earn profits and retain a specific amount of their assets in fixed interest bonds. And it was a law that was vigorously enforced at that time. To boost the value of their government bond holdings, many banks adopted a method known as Ready Forward Deals or RFDs. The Ready Forward Deal is a process by which Bank A, which temporarily required cash, would sell securities to Bank B to obtain the cash. After a few days, Bank A would purchase the securities back from Bank B at a slightly higher rate than it had originally paid. The difference in the purchase and sale prices of securities was interest paid for borrowing the bonds. Even though RBI mandated banks to directly deal with other banks in the event of securities dealings, they choose to rely on brokers because it was quicker and less time consuming. As a result, a broker collaborates with two banks. When a bank wants to sell securities, it relies on a broker for help. This broker locates at another bank and attempts to sell the securities, and vice versa for buying. Thus, several transactions involving these bonds were carried between two various financial institutions at that time. And that's where Harshad Mehta, the clear-sighted mastermind, has come up with a novel strategy to raise money from banks. With his stock trading company, Harshad was able to assist many banks with these bond trades. Suppose one bank wanted to sell securities and another wanted to buy them. Harshad Mehta would approach both banks as broker and negotiate the terms of transaction. At that time, BIAs or bank receipts were given by borrower banks to the lender banks that were willing to buy securities. That means real securities were not exchanged, only BIAs were issued instead, and in return, a check was issued. So what Mehta did was requesting the banks to issue checks in his name rather than the banks, so that the funds would be transferred to his personal account. Because of his well-established reputation and the many friends he had earned over the years, banks placed a trust in him, and the checks were issued to his personal name. The Indian banking system was incredibly slow at that time, which means the funds would frequently sit in a broker's account for up to 2 weeks, so he could do whatever he wanted with this money in his bank account. Moreover, banks were confident that the money was safe in his hands. Eventually, he devised a plan to collect additional funds by issuing fake bank receipts. It also avoided the headaches that come with banks requiring securities at different points in the transaction process. So he worked with the bank officials in Karan and Metropolitan Cooperative Bank to produce fake bank receipts. The ability to fabricate bogus bank receipts was now at his fingertips, which I would say is incredible. Therefore, he was able to raise more than enough funds for his well-crafted master plan. So, what was he hoping to accomplish with this huge amount of money? What was his master plan? He invested all that money into the stock market. But investing into the stock market isn't the wrong thing, right? Of course not. But what Harshad Mehta, the evil-minded criminal, did was artificially boost the price of any on stock through regular injection of big sums of money into it, which is absolutely illegal. This is what exactly called a pump and dump scheme. As a result, stock prices skyrocketed. One of the major pump and dump operations he was involved in was pumping enormous sums of money into ACC Siemens Limited, which boosted the price from 200 to 9,000 in a matter of months, which is a 4,400% inflation in price. Numerous other companies including Reliance, Apollo Tyres and BPL were also impacted by Harshad Mehta's tremendous manipulation of share prices. However, the worst part was that banks were aware of Harshad Mehta's actions but chose to remain silent because they too would benefit from Harshad's stock market fortune. The banks would get a cut of profits which he had promised to do. Additionally, this would allow the banks to maintain profits. In 1991, when he was 37, the BSE was absolutely raging. The stock market was in the midst of a record-breaking bull run at that time. Investors across India were bullish about the markets and increased their investments, thereby driving the prices higher. Harshad Mehta was conducting his operations on a scale that one could describe as unfathomable to an average person. In a single year, he had driven Sensex, the index of Bombay Stock Exchange, from 1000 to 4500. In a traditionally conservative market like Indian stock market, this was an inconceivable bull run to witness. He was at the pinnacle of his profession and had achieved celebrity status in India's stock market. He has risen to a prominence and earned the title Big Bull of Indian stock market. Those were the finest days in Harshad Mehta's life as he rose to the top of the intellectual ladder as one of the most bright and brilliant masterminds that India has ever known. But he was blissfully unaware that his happiest days were drawing to an end. Whenever you commit a transgression, you should be always conscious of the fact that someone is watching you. In his case, it was Sujita Dalal, a journalist who was working for the Times of India. For years, she had been monitoring Mehta and was curious how he could rack up such enormous wealth from the stock market. She conducted a thorough investigation, followed up on witnesses, and kept tabs on Harshad Mehta's whereabouts with only one intention in her mind: to expose him. And at the long last, the whole truth came to light. In April 1992, she published an article in Times of India in which she had exposed Harshad Mehta and his fraudulent activities in the market. She revealed that 500 crore rupees that has been gone missing from SBI's books had been fraudulently obtained by Harshad Mehta. The news spread like wildfire. And that was the beginning of downfall of Harshad Mehta's era. In the late April 1992, it was discovered that Mehta was a substantial investor in government securities, which led to the discovery of the scam. When the general public realized Mehta's investments were illegal and his stocks were almost probably worthless, a sell-off of Mehta stocks started. In the wake of Mehta's collapse, banks that had lent him money found themselves with hundreds of millions of rupees in unsecured debt. The combination of furious selling and the reality that multiple banks has been scammed triggered the Indian stock market to crash, with prices dropping by 40% immediately. Stocks ended up by falling 72%. Market capitalization of 1 lakh crore rupees were wiped out. One of the most significant events that occurred was the breakdown of the Indian financial system, which was thrust into the public eye. The bank realized that the bank receipts in their possession were fake ones and totally worthless. Thousands of innocent retail investors lost thousands of crore rupees. In addition, banks suffered loss in billions. In November that year, Harshad Mehta was arrested by Central Bureau of Investigation, and the Securities and Exchange Board of India (SEBI) issued a lifelong ban on him from engaging in the stock markets. But in the wake of the securities scam, Harshad Mehta came forward with some outrageous allegations against the government officials. One of those allegations was that he had received assistance from high-ranking government officials. Indeed, he even claimed to have bribed former Prime Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao with a sum of Rs 1 crore. Regrettably, there were no evidence to support the claims. As a result, these charges were never shown to be accurate. Enormous bank personals, brokers, bureaucrats, and even politicians were involved in this high-profile scam. Several of them, including R. Sitharaman, who was at the center of SBI's irregularities, were convicted of fraud on several offences. Following this scam, several authorities seized majority of Harshad Mehta's and his family's assets and slammed him with massive income tax penalties. Harshad Mehta and his family members faced 72 criminal accusations as well as more than 600 civil lawsuits. And in 2001, when he was 47 years old and halfway through his sentence in Thane jail, Harshad Shantilal Mehta, the man who earned the moniker Big Bull of Indian stock market for himself, one of the brightest minds India has ever seen, passed away due to cardiac arrest. No doubt, his story is not worthy of being praised and immortalized in the halls of history, but the scam exposed the vulnerabilities in the Indian financial system which were previously unknown. Who knows if these loopholes have been exploited by many other Harshad Mehtas in the past? Who knows how many high-ranking government officials have benefited from these loopholes? Who knows how many financial institutions were taking advantage of these flaws in the system? This scam cannot be pulled off by Mehta alone because it's impossible. So, one thing is certain, that a large number of other reputable, high-ranking officials also were involved. But only Harshad Mehta was made the scapegoat because someone had to be blamed. And at the same time, other influential persons, political leaders, government officials and authorities were kept out of the spotlight. Is it only Harshad Mehta who is the culprit? In this story, which role do you think Harshad Mehta belongs to? The hero or the villain? You decide.